Hi, Mr. Meikle here. This is a short video on how you can write summaries from a reading text. This is a very difficult skill for a lot of students, so we're going to go through it very simply. We'll start with a simple example, what you should do, and then we'll work through to a more difficult example. The topic we're going to look at today is plastic bags and waterways. It's a good topic. It's what we're looking at in English 1 and reading at the moment. So we're going to think about plastic bags and their effect on rivers, lakes and oceans. As mentioned, the purpose of this is summary writing. Now there's two things that we need to think about with writing a good summary from a reading. First of all, what do you do while you're reading? And then what do you do while you're writing? But let's start with the reading part. The first thing is we need to understand the paragraph that we're reading. Essay, if we're looking at an essay, or an article. What are we reading? Paragraph are we reading, and then what parts of the paragraph are we looking at? So remember PEE, point, explain, example. At a paragraph level, we want to think about what are the main point or points that the writer is making. And we need to remember that when we're reading something, those main points may often be repeated. So when we look at it, we want to write down what's the main point the writer is trying to get across. We need to think about the explanation, the second E. The writer will explain that main point. Often if we're doing a summary, we don't need to worry about the explanation, but it will help us understand what that main point might be. A good paragraph will include examples to explain further so the reader understands the point. We almost never include them in our summary, but they help us understand the paragraph again. And finally, remember when we're reading to ignore vocab you don't know. A lot of the vocab you're going to read is not necessary and it's repeated. Writers try and show off. Our job when we're writing a summary, what is the key point? Now if we switch to how we're going to write our summary, we're going to look at those main points, we're going to try and simplify them, and then we're going to use our own language, so we're not copying from the reading paragraph. But one thing we need to be careful about is not overgeneralizing. Sometimes students, when they're writing a summary, will try and make it too simple. So we need to make sure that the key points are still represented in our summary so we can write a good summary. Now let's have a look right here at this example here. Now this is at a paragraph level. It's about plastic bags. It's nice and easy really. But as we read through it, you'll start to notice that some of these words are repeated, some of the ideas are repeated. Now what is the main idea? So I'll give you a second here. Pause here would be a good idea. Pause, stop, read yourself. What do you think are the main points? So as I now animate the paragraph again to the side here, you see that I have highlighted in black what I think are the key words. So we've got this destructive impact, then we have plastic bags, oceans, marine life. That's the main idea. And often, almost always in fact, the main point of a paragraph is in that first sentence. So we're going to look for the topic sentence. What is the paragraph about? Now when we read into the next bit, we see tossed into waterways or washed down storm drains. The bags are the major source of human related debris on the seabed, particularly near coastlines. So this bit here is all explaining the idea and giving examples. So when we write our summary, we don't really need this. It's not really an essential part of the paragraph. Then they mention 267 different species that are affected. So if we think about it, these different species, that's just the marine life that was mentioned in the topic sentence. Then they mention the words entanglement and ingestion and plastics. Again, these words are repeated from up above. The good thing is when you understand the main idea of the paragraph, then we can come back and look at these other words and we can guess what they mean. For example, this word debris here, we can come back and once we've understood the meaning of the paragraph, we can go, okay, so that debris word is part of the explanation. It's not the main idea, it's explaining the same idea. So I'm going to have a guess that human-related debris, that sounds a bit like plastic, and that's what it means. Debris, this word here, relates to plastic that's left lying around. Not just plastic, anything that we have left lying around. Different species down here is referring back to marine life. Now we also know that it's about how plastic bags affect marine life, so this entanglement and ingestion of marine debris Marine debris, we're seeing this word debris again, so that's plastics. So we can kind of guess that those words entanglement and ingestion are related to how it might affect animals, and we know it's a destructive way. Now the next thing we need to think about is those key words that we've identified: destructive impact, plastic bags, oceans and marine life, the different species, entanglement and ingestion of plastics. Now we need to think about synonyms. What words can we use so our writing's not exactly the same? So I might just keep plastic bags, but if we've got destructive impact and then we've got entanglement and ingestion, so both those things down the bottom are the same meaning. A good synonym for entanglement would be strangled, and ingestion means eat, so that would be two good words we could use there. The different species, maybe we're just going to talk about animals. It's in the sea, so we could use sea animals, and that's probably enough. So here are two example summaries of that paragraph. First one: plastic bags in the ocean caused the death of many sea animals. Very short, isn't it? But that's it. That is the main idea of that paragraph. And to write a good summary, that's all you need to do. It should be nice and short. Here's another one: many sea animals eat or are strangled by plastics in the ocean. So again, this is a similar idea. It's a bit better than the one before because it's talking about how the animals are affected by plastics, but really either of those is quite a good summary. And the main thing with students, they write their summaries, they're far too long. So the important thing is to understand what the key words are, think about how you're going to provide synonyms, and use them nice and simply like that. Now if we move on to this next slide here, we see, as we move on to this, we see multiple paragraphs. So this is taken from another reading, again the same topic, so you should follow through the same process. As I look at that first paragraph, so we're going to come through and we're going to highlight key words, and then we're going to think about how we can use those words, what synonyms we could use to write it much more simply, but to keep the main idea. So again, this is very similar. The 300 million plastic bags, dangerous to sea life. It's very, very similar to the last one, isn't it? This middle paragraph, though, is an example paragraph. So we've got porpoises, their digestion. And then the final paragraph is about the ecosystem and how if one animal dies, then another animal might be affected, and the whole ecosystem of the ocean in this case may be affected. So we'd be going through those in the same way as we did with the paragraph, and we would try and summarize it this exactly the same way. So you can go away after this, have a look at that writing and practice yourself. Here is another example. Now this is a much more difficult one. This is from an academic reading. So you see there's an abstract to one side and then the introduction. This is just the start of this paper. It's much longer than what you see here, but we see again that this is the summary that we've written about before. If you read through, this is very similar to this one here, although the language is much more complex. So again, go away with those last two slides, slide 5 or slide 6 here, and have a think about them. Try writing your own summary. Good luck. Being able to write a summary from a reading paragraph is a key aspect of all university study. It shows that you understand the topic, and it's something that you need to get good at to do well in university.